Jennifer Piercy as the minister, and Jack Carr as Mick. The Last Dirty Man.
You have a purity factor of 93.3. The level is acceptable.
I think I'd rather just make sure.
The level is perfectly acceptable.
Better safe than sorry.
Very well. You have a purity factor of 96.4. The level is acceptable.
Thank you.
Come in, Martin.
Good morning, Mrs. Trent.
Good morning, Martin.
Were you expecting me?
No, I don't think so. Oh, I heard the purifier going. Since nobody with PF lower than 90 can reach this level, and since you're the only person I know who wouldn't be satisfied with a PF of 90 plus, what did you achieve this morning?
96.4.
You must be careful, Martin. The doctors are all agreed that anyone with PF of 100 would be too good to live, quite literally.
I feel that people in our position should set an example, Mrs. Trent.
I was only joking.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've rather a lot on my mind at the moment.
Did you want to see Michael?
If the director could spare me a few minutes, I'd be very grateful.
I'll see if he's free.
Who is it?
Old Mother Martin.
Jane, I do wish you wouldn't call him that.
Well, I've never known a man so totally devoid of a sense of humour.
He doesn't need a sense of humour to do his job, and he's totally dedicated.
It isn't his dedication that worries me. Well, actually, I'm not sure that it isn't.
Anyway, I wish you'd be nicer to him. What does he want?
I didn't say. I suppose it must be pretty urgent to bring him round at this hour.
Yes, I suppose so. Martin, come in, won't you?
Good morning, Director. I'm sorry to disturb you so early.
That's all right. I'm sure you wouldn't unless it was absolutely necessary. Sit down.
Can I get you something, Martin? Cup of coffee?
Thank you, no, Mrs. Trent. I've already had my breakfast.
Well, I suppose I'd better be on my way. Michael, you won't forget that Max and Judy are coming this evening, will you?
No, of course not.
Bye, then.
Goodbye, darling. See you this evening.
Goodbye, Martin. Nice to have seen you.
Goodbye, Mrs. Trent. I sometimes feel Mrs. Trent has no very high opinion of me.
Nonsense, Martin. She has a great respect for your ability. We both have. Now, what was it you wanted to see me about?
It's a little difficult to know where to begin, Director. It may be just coincidence. I may just be wasting your time.
I'm sure you'd never do that, Martin.
About 3 months ago, a factory girl from the perimeter, was suddenly seized with a particularly virulent attack of fever.
Mm-hmm.
There was some delay in reporting the matter, and before the disease could be identified, let alone treated, the girl died. Unfortunate, of course, but these things do still happen occasionally, especially on the perimeter.
Yes.
Our colleagues from Physical were called in at once, of course, and the usual rigorous checks were carried out. None of the girl's contacts had the slightest sign of contamination. The factory was examined from top to bottom. They did find some mildly contaminated material, but nothing out of the ordinary by the standards of the perimeter. The girl had been into the country the week before, but checked back in with a purity factor of 85. Physical were at a loss. They eventually had to abandon the investigation and write it off as one of those inexplicable biological freaks that occur from time to time.
What about the autopsy?
All that revealed was that the girl had succumbed to an almost extinct form of virus, nothing to show how or where she came into contact with it.
I don't really see how this concerns us, Martin.
There was one other piece of evidence that the autopsy revealed. The girl was pregnant.
When did you say this was?
3 months ago.
I don't seem to remember.
That's
being
the point,
told.
Director. You weren't told. Neither was I. Neither was anyone else at the Bureau.
What?
The autopsy report was filed in the normal way, of course. Presumably the people at Records and the doctor who carried out the autopsy thought that the proper procedures were being carried out.
I assume the doctor informed the girl's local controller.
That would be the standard practice.
Then why didn't he tell us?
Perhaps he thought that as the girl was dead, there was no point in informing us.
If he thought that, he'll be very sorry indeed. Well, I'm glad you told me all this, Martin. Although I think it could have waited a little.
But I haven't finished, Director. The point is, there's another one.
Another?
Another girl. That's how I finally learnt about this first case. Early this morning, a secretary in one of our minor ministries was admitted to Central Hospital suffering from advanced biological disorder. The doctors were at a loss to diagnose her illness, so they fed the symptoms into the computer. The only card the machine produced that had virtually identical symptoms was the girl on the perimeter. The doctor in charge spotted the pregnancy on the card and re-examined the girl who came in today. He found evidence of recent carnal activity and a very real probability of pregnancy.
Yes, Director?
I want a vehicle to take me to Central Hospital, immediately.
Do you think it could be coincidence, Director?
We live in a city of 4 million people, Martin. How many people would you say died of biological causes each year, on average?
30 at the most.
At the most, quite. And how many illegal pregnancies are there in any given year?
About twice that number.
And what would you think were the chances of 2 people falling into both categories within 3 months?
Astronomical, Director.
Exactly.
What do you think it is, then?
I can't begin to imagine.
Ah, good. I see young Tefler's here.
Tefler?
One of the coming men in physical. A little inclined to let his keenness run away with him, but basically sound.
Martin, what brings you here?
Much the same thing that brings you, I imagine.
The girl? There's nothing in that for moral, is there?
You didn't know she was pregnant.
Pregnant? No, I didn't. No one told me.
The doctor appears to combine discretion with efficiency.
I think he might have told me. Still, I suppose it's not actually relevant to the real problem.
The real problem?
Identifying the disease, screening all her contacts, and ensuring that there's no possibility of an epidemic.
Tefler, I don't think you've met our director before, have you?
Director? I'm sorry, sir. I didn't realize.
I'm well aware that it's an article of faith in your department that moral hygiene is a relatively unimportant subsidiary of physical. You must forgive us if we can't altogether subscribe to that opinion.
No, of course not, sir. I hope you didn't think that I meant
With
to
regard to epidemic, what is the situation?
All clear, sir. We've screened all her known contacts and not a trace of contamination.
All of them?
All of them, sir. Even the most casual.
That was quick. Well done.
So now it's simply a matter of finding out how she came by the wretched disease.
Quite. Oh, where's the doctor now?
With the girl, sir. I'm afraid he doesn't hold out much hope. She's delirious.
Who's that over in the corner? The girl's father?
No, sir. Both her parents are dead. That's her employer. He's something fairly unimportant in commerce.
He seems very upset.
He's been told 100 times that there's nothing he can do, but he insists on staying.
Does he now?
Director, forgive me, but, well, you being here yourself, if there's anything I should know...
At the moment, we're as much in the dark as you are, Tefler. If we are... Dr. Rayner?
That's right.
I'm Michael Trent, Director of Moral Hygiene. How is your patient?
Quite hopeless. She's in the final phase. We got her far too late to do anything useful. I can't understand why this wasn't discovered earlier. Some routine purity check.
May I see her, Doctor?
I can't see the point. She's completely delirious.
Even so.
Look, Mr. Trent, I reported the pregnancy to your department as a matter of course. But the girl is dying. Is there really any necessity?
Doctor, I'm not a monster. I feel as sorry for the girl as you do, whatever she may have done. But you must see how vital it is that I do everything in my power to discover how she came to be in this condition.
Which particular condition were you thinking of?
Either. Both.
We mustn't be punished. It's wrong. Be punished. Yes. Oh, yes. No, we mustn't be punished. Be punished. Oh, be punished.
I hope you found that useful.
Is she dead?
She is.
Tefler,
Yes, Director?
what steps have you taken so far to track this thing down?
Well, none as yet, really, Director. I mean, I thought the screening was the most important.
Yes, all right. We'd better have a word with her employer.
Mr. Sullivan,
Yes?
my name is Michael Trent. I'm the Director of Moral Hygiene.
Yes. I'm sorry, I don't understand.
I'm afraid I have some bad news for you.
She's not dead.
I'm afraid so.
Why?
She had a biological disease, Mr. Sullivan. There was nothing the doctors could do.
Yes, of course. I'm sorry. That was a silly thing to say. I'm sorry.
There are one or two things we're very anxious to find out, Mr. Sullivan.
such as why Miss Fraser didn't go to a doctor until her illness was so advanced.
I know I don't understand. She rang me 3 days ago to say she wasn't coming to work.
3 days ago?
Yes, but you see, she said she had a migraine. She did get them sometimes. She wasn't very strong. It never occurred to me. Then this morning I was a bit worried. I rang up to see how she was. I rang and rang. In the end, I went to her flat and Sorry. I'm very sorry.
You seem to have been very fond of this girl, Mr. Sullivan.
Yes. Well, she was sweet. I mean, like a daughter, really.
You have no children yourself?
Yes, I do. 2 lovely girls. I'm very happily married. Look, why are you asking? What's this got to do with you? He's the man from physical.
You didn't know your secretary was pregnant?
That's not true.
Why do you say that, Mr. Sullivan?
Because it's not true. She wasn't like that. She was a good girl.
There's no possible doubt.
I see.
Have you any idea who could have been responsible?
You think I would have known? I never even imagined. You don't think... Look, I never touched her. I never so much as touched her.
Mr. Sullivan.
We talked, that's all. We used to talk. My job couldn't exactly be described as being of world-shattering importance. Sometimes there's nothing to do for days on end. We just used to talk. She was rather lonely. Her parents were dead, and she didn't find it easy to make friends, and well, I
am a happily married man.
I think, if you don't mind, I'll go home now.
Mr. Sullivan, have you any idea at all how your secretary might have caught this disease?
No, none at all.
You don't know, for instance, if she'd been into the country recently?
Well, yes. She used to go every weekend.
Every weekend?
Well, almost every weekend. She used to paint. Little watercolours.
Who did she go with, do you know?
Well, by herself. She had a grade 3 clearance.
That's unusual for a secretary, isn't it?
I arranged it. Well, I don't see... She's been doing it for years and nothing's ever happened before.
All right, Mr. Sullivan, you can go. Unless, I'm sorry, do you have any more questions, Tefler?
No, I don't think so. Thank you, Director.
All right. And, Mr. Sullivan, if I were you, I'd be very careful when it comes to choosing Miss Fraser's replacement.
Yes.
And if you haven't enough work to occupy your mind, find something that does, something constructive.
Yes, of course. Yes, I will.
Wretched little man.
You're sure he isn't responsible, Director?
Quite sure. Men like that never actually break the law.
They just spend 24 hours a day thinking about it.
But surely, if he had thoughts like that about the girl, surely he has his pills.
You're a healthy young chap, Tefler. You don't understand these things.
There's a certain kind of person who deliberately, quite deliberately and consciously refuses to take the pills.
But that's disgusting.
Personally, I feel that the Sullivans of this world are more to be pitied than despised. But this isn't getting us anywhere. And what about these trips to the country? Do you think they're of any significance?
I can't see how, Director. I mean, whatever happened, she couldn't have got back into the city without undergoing a purity check.
Better check it out, though. Find out what time she came back, what exactly her purity factor was, as far as possible, where she went.
Yes, sir.
And Tefler, we're obviously going to have to liaise pretty closely on this. Would you be kind enough to tell Geoffrey that I'll probably be in touch with him this evening?
I'll tell him, Director.
Off you go, then. Martin, you better get in touch with the controller of the factory that first girl worked in. Tell him I want to see him in his office in exactly 2 hours, without fail.
We're going out to the perimeter, Director?
We must, I'm afraid. Oh, yes. And I'd better call my wife. We're expecting people to dinner.
My father. He was in the army, a sergeant. You know what his favourite bit of fun was? He used to come home stinking drunk in the middle of the night, drag us all out of bed. My mother, me, both my sisters. He'd make us all go down to the lounge and line up against the wall. Then he used to take out his service revolver and point it at our heads, one after the other, and tell us to give one good reason why he shouldn't blow our brains out. Then when he got tired of that game, he'd lie down on the floor and cry and tell us how much he loved us. The awful thing was, he was so drunk, the only time he was safe was when it was supposed to be pointing at you. One night he had it trained on me, and it went off. blew the telly to pieces.
What do you make of that, Doctor, dear?
What do you make of it?
Oh, I'd say it was a classic case, wouldn't you? Total absence of normal paternal affection, complete lack of a sympathetic masculine image to identify with. What chance did the poor boy have?
I take it you've been here before, Malcolm.
More times than you can count, Doctor, dear. But you're by far the nicest, really you are. The last one tried aversion therapy.
But, Malcolm, if you're intelligent enough to understand the reasons for your condition, surely you can do something about it.
No offence, Doctor, dear, but that's a bit like saying now we know it was the carving knife she used to cut her husband's head off, we can sew it back on again and he'll be up and about in no time.
You really want to think of yourself as incurable, is that it?
Doctor, can I ask you something?
Of course.
If you're all so frightened of us, why don't you just lock us up, throw away the key, and leave us in peace?
Malcolm, nobody wants to punish you for something that isn't basically your fault. We want to help you to take your place and... Yes, what is it?
Your husband is on the line, Doctor.
Oh, put him through, please. Excuse me a moment, Malcolm.
Hello, Jane.
Michael, is anything wrong?
It's that business of Martin's. It looks as though I shall have to deal with it personally. It means going out to the perimeter, I'm afraid.
Oh, dear.
I'll try and get back as soon as I can, but will you make my apologies to Max and Judy if I miss them?
Yes, of course.
Sorry to mess up your evening.
Can't be helped. I'll see you when I see you then, shall I?
That's it. Goodbye, darling.
Bye. Sorry about that. Small domestic crisis.
Nice, is he, your husband?
I quite like him, yes.
Have you got kiddies?
No, not yet. What about you? Are you fond of children?
Yes, I love them.
It's not out of the question, you know. Part of the rehabilitation scheme is to encourage marriages of people of your kind who've made genuine efforts to adapt themselves with women who've had similar problems. After a successful trial period, the authorities tend to look very kindly on childbirth applications. Sex really isn't that important, you know, Malcolm. Even in normal marriages, it's kept down to the basic minimum necessary to avoid stress.
Sorry, Doctor. I was just thinking of a rude poem I used to know once.
Located in Khartoum, if I remember correctly.
Doctor, dear, you shock me. You really do.
You didn't see the point.
No, I didn't.
A young girl in your charge was illegally pregnant and you didn't see the point of reporting it.
It's in the autopsy report.
Yes, as a footnote. It was your clear duty to bring it to the attention of the proper authorities.
Why? She was dead. She was a nice kid. What was the point of pouring muck all over her name?
And the father? Is he dead too? Did you make any attempt at all to find out who he was?
I talked to some of the lads, yes.
And?
None of them knew anything about it.
And you believed them?
Yes. Yes, I did. This isn't central, you know. We do things differently here.
Obviously. So you talked to the lads, got nothing from them, and then, in spite of the fact that there was a sex criminal walking around in your jurisdiction, you felt there was no point in informing the authorities.
Sex criminal.
You don't think it's a crime? Making a girl pregnant?
I know it's against the law.
You're relieved of your duties, pending an inquiry, as from this minute.
Suit yourself. Is that all?
No. The girl. Did she have any particular friend? A woman friend, I mean, someone she might have confided in?
Yes, she used to knock around with young Sheila Harris.
I want to see her.
I'll send her up then. If you're sure it's safe to let me loose in the woman's area.
Why do we bother? Why on earth do we bother? We are here because this sort of thing exists, Martin. If it didn't, we'd be redundant. But when even people in authority...
I know. But in a way, things are different on the perimeter. You take an intelligent man, a man with useful work, it's not hard to make him see what a criminal waste of time and energy all this business is. But these people, well, you've had to deal with them as often as I have. Their work is boring, repetitive, uncreative. If you accuse one of them of social irresponsibility, he just mutters something about only having a little bit of fun. Try to explain to him the inefficiency, the chaos that would result if we all went round having our little bit of fun. Whenever we felt like it, he just stares at you with his mouth open.
All the more reason to...
Come in.
Mr. Lewis said you wanted to see me.
That's right. It's Sheila, isn't it?
I haven't done anything.
Of course you haven't. No one's saying you have. We just want to talk to you, that's all. Come in. There's no need to be frightened. We just want to ask you a few questions.
What about?
You were a friend of Eileen Gardner's, weren't you?
Yes.
A good friend?
Yes.
Sheila, I don't want to upset you, but you must realize that it's vitally important that we find out exactly what happened to Eileen.
They were here before they asked all that.
The men from Physical?
Yes,
We're not from Physical, Sheila.
I know.
Now, I understand that a few days before she died, Eileen had been into the country.
Yeah, we all did. It was a works outing. We go every year. But she was clean when she came back. It said on her card.
How do you know what it said on her card?
Well, must have done, mustn't it? Otherwise they'd never have let her back in.
Sheila, did you know Eileen was pregnant?
No, I didn't know. Honestly, I didn't.
But you're not really surprised, are you? Sheila? Sheila, when you came in, you said you hadn't done anything wrong. I don't think that was the truth. But whatever you've done, however bad it is, it can't be as bad as refusing to help us now.
I didn't see any harm in it.
Harm in what, girl?
Martin. It was that day in the country, wasn't it, Sheila?
Mm.
Now tell us exactly what happened.
Well, we were all in this big clearing having lunch. Mr. Ferris was giving us this talk, you know, about the history of the countryside, boring stuff like that. And suddenly Eileen said, I'm just going to slip off for a bit. If anyone misses me, you can tell them I've gone for, well, you know, cooler nature.
Were you surprised?
Not really. She did it last year, too. She liked to be by herself sometimes.
She wasn't going to meet someone, one of the men from the factory.
No.
How can you be certain?
Well, because she wasn't, that's all. There wasn't anybody. Then about half an hour later she came back. She looked, you know, funny.
Ill, you mean?
No, not ill, not then. She just looked funny. I said, did you have a nice walk? And she said, did anyone notice I'd gone? And she really looked worried about it, not like last year. She really wasn't bothered at all that time. And then, when we were going back to the coach, that's when she started to look ill. I said, you look dreadful, what's the matter? And she said, whatever you do, don't tell anybody. And I said, they'll find out soon enough at the checkpoint. And then she was really frightened.
And then what happened? What happened, Sheila?
She promised me to go straight to a purifier as soon as we were back in the city. She just didn't want anyone to know she'd been, well, off by herself.
So what happened?
Well, what happens at the gate, they split you up into groups and they go over you with a hand meter. And they stamp your card to show you're not contaminated. They don't really look at the card, not if you're clean. They just stamp it without really looking at it. And Eileen and I didn't look all that different, not in our pictures.
So?
So I went into one group and got my card stamped. And then I went over to another one and went through with Eileen's. The card didn't even notice.
Stupid, wicked little girl.
All right, Martin. You do realise, don't you, Sheila, that if you hadn't agreed to this idiotic scheme, Eileen would probably have been alive now. All right. You can go.
What are you going to do to me?
We'll have to see, won't we? Oh, nothing very serious, I imagine. You seem to have been punished enough. Go on now.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. She's sorry. If you'll forgive my saying so, Director, you were too soft with her.
Possibly. She isn't really the problem, though, is she? What the devil could have happened to that girl out there?
Patently, she went into a contaminated area. I've always been opposed to these trips to the country.
It's perfectly safe if the proper procedures are followed. It's not all that long ago that living in the country was considered healthier than living in the city.
Oh.
Anyway, going into a contaminated area would hardly make her pregnant, would it?
You have a purity factor of 91. The level is acceptable.
That you, Michael?
I thought you'd be in bed.
Max and Judy only left half an hour ago. Oh, before I forget, an eager young man from Physical has been on twice. Says, would you mind calling him however late you came in?
Tefler?
Yes. He says he won't go to bed until he's heard from you. Very eager. The number's by the machine.
How were Max and Judy, anyway?
Oh, much as usual. Max was a bit disappointed you weren't here. I think he wanted you on his side over this controllership he's after.
Probably a good thing I wasn't here.
I thought you liked Max.
Tefler here.
Ah, Tefler. It's Michael Trent.
Ah, Director. Thank you for calling.
What did you find out?
Director, I went to the checkpoint the girl left from. Apparently she always went into the same area, particularly liked the scenery or something. The guards knew her well. They said she was one of the most scrupulously hygienic people they'd ever come across. PF never below the high 80s, often into the mid-90s. They were very insistent about it.
What about that particular day?
Well, that's the point, Director. I couldn't quite see why they were so anxious to convince me of the girl's invariable cleanliness. Eventually, I got it out of them. Apparently, there'd been an enormous crowd that day waiting at the checkpoint. When the girl drove up, she was terribly upset. Said her car had broken down and she was terribly late for an urgent appointment. Well, they were so sure of her that they let her straight through.
Without even running a hand meter over her?
Apparently not. She promised to go straight to a purifier when she got to her appointment.
Idiots.
Quite. They've been relieved of duty, it goes without saying. Sir, do you still want me to arrange a meeting with my director?
I think it's even more important than that, Tefler. I think we should bring the minister in on this.
Do you really think so, sir?
Yes, I do. I'll ring her now and try and get an appointment for tomorrow. I'll be in touch with Geoffrey when she gives me a time.
All right, sir. Good night, then.
Good night, Tefler. Oh, this city seems to be falling apart.
What's the problem?
If anybody had asked me this morning, I'd have said I lived in a sane, ordered society where, apart from a few freaks and malcontents, people obeyed the rules because they realized it was in their own interests to do so. Since this business came up, it's been one long saga of incompetence, criminal irresponsibility, and calculated indifference to the law.
Have a drink and tell me all about it.
I think I must agree with Geoffrey, Michael. I can't really see the problem.
There's no problem, Minister. I just feel that this should be a joint operation, that Geoffrey and I should liaise at every point.
Look, it's not that I don't want your company, dear boy. I'd be delighted to have you along. I just can't see the point. What we're dealing with here is a straightforward problem of a high contamination area. It happens all the time.
2 areas, 50 miles apart.
All right, then 2 areas. It makes no difference. They've both been closed off. My chaps are going over it with a fine-tooth comb.
They won't find anything.
Well, thank you for that touching declaration of faith.
It's a simple matter of priorities, Michael.
And physical always has priority.
When people are dying, yes.
Oh, come on, dear boy. There's not much scope for moral re-education in a city full of corpses. Even you can't believe better dead than Prague.
Geoffrey!
Ah, sorry, Minister.
Minister, of course I accept that physical has to have priority in the short term. All I'm saying is that Geoffrey's job is a lot more straightforward than mine. He has to track down the source of the contamination, isolate it, purify it, or destroy it. Well, I have to do that too, but moral contamination is a lot harder to trace and a damn sight more complicated to deal with.
That's understood, Michael.
I just don't want Geoffrey's people doing something to further his short-term aims that might jeopardize my long-term ones beyond repair.
Such as what?
Well, I don't know. It's just a feeling I've got.
Yes, well, with the best will in the world. I can't have your people falling about under my chaps' feet, stopping them doing their job properly just because you've got a feeling. Look, this isn't like you, Michael. If you don't mind my saying so, I think you're letting this coincidence over the pregnancies cloud your judgment.
It isn't a coincidence.
What are you suggesting?
I don't like to think.
Michael, nothing lives out there. Nothing can live out there.
We can't live out there. Don't forget, the move to the cities was primarily for administrative efficiency, not hygiene. People lived out there quite happily for thousands of years.
What did you have in mind? A race of little green men who've been lying low out there for centuries, but have suddenly taken it into their heads to start jumping out from behind the bushes and making girls pregnant?
It isn't funny, Geoffrey.
Funny? It's ludicrous.
Please, gentlemen. Shall we for the moment say that Geoffrey will proceed in the normal fashion, but that he will inform Michael the minute he comes across any information, however slight, that seems to fall within his jurisdiction?
I would have done that as a matter of course, Minister.
I'm sure you would, Geoffrey. We'll leave it like that then, shall we? Michael, dear, would you mind staying behind for a minute or two?
Of course.
Thank you, Geoffrey.
Oh, thank you, Minister.
I'm sorry, Minister. I didn't mean to sound unreasonable.
No need to apologize, Michael. Zeal is a quality I'm sure we all admire. Do sit down for a moment.
Thank you.
Well, apart from this admittedly rather puzzling business, how are things going in general?
Pretty much routine, Minister. The usual problems, the usual solutions.
And what about this latest group of crackpots? What do they call themselves?
CLEF.
CLEF. Now, what's that supposed to mean?
Committee for the Legalization of Erotic Freedom.
Ah, wonderful how these people always bandy the word freedom around, when what they mean is freedom to indulge their appetites at the expense of the rest of us.
Quite.
But you don't see them as a serious threat?
No, I don't think so, Minister.
There's been a few pamphlets, a couple of wall daubings. There's no real organisation there. I've no doubt when we track them down we'll find the usual ragbag of disgruntled intellectuals and assorted deviants.
Quite. Well, as long as you can hang on to your objectivity.
I don't think I've ever had any difficulty remaining objective, Minister.
No, I'm sure. It was your common-sense attitude that led to my placing you in your present position, over older and, doubtless in their own opinion, wiser heads.
Thank you, Minister.
All the same, one must always be aware, in a job like yours, of the possibility of becoming, how shall I put it, a little obsessive.
I don't think there's any danger of that.
There is always a danger, Michael. I've seen it happen more than once. What you might call an occupational hazard.
I'll try to guard against it.
I'm sure you will. After all, we have nothing against sex in its proper place. It's only its abuses that concern us.
Quite.
Well, let me see you to the door.
Oh, please don't bother.
No bother. I sometimes feel I'm in serious danger of taking root behind that desk. Now, how's dear Jane, by the way? It seems such a long time since I've seen her.
Oh, she's very well. Very busy, of course.
Do give her my love, won't you?
Of course.
You don't have any children yet, is that right?
Not yet, no.
You mustn't wait too long, you know, or you'll be too old to enjoy them.
Oh, we do have a certificate, Minister. I'm afraid we just haven't been lucky yet.
Oh, well, these things can't be rushed. Goodbye for the moment, Michael dear.
Director?
Oh, Martin.
I hoped I'd catch you.
What is it?
There's been another one.
What?
In the hospital now. An assistant lecturer at the university. Whatever this thing is, it seems to be leaping up the social scale every time it strikes.
What happened exactly?
Well, as you might expect, she behaved with considerably more intelligence than the others. About an hour ago, she presented herself at the gate of Sector 3, the same sector as the last girl, you'll notice, and said she had reason to believe she might have become contaminated. They checked her out and found she had a PF reading of 67. They rushed her here straight away, and they've been working on her ever since. The doctor... here he is. He can tell you himself.
Good evening, Director.
Good evening, Dr. Rayner. What have you got to tell me?
Exactly what I told your friends from Physical. Exactly the same symptoms as before, but to a much less marked degree. I think we got her in time. We should know within the next hour.
May I see her?
If you must. She's certainly worth looking at. Oh, there she is.
She's...
Come on, Director, you can say it. Even you must be allowed an aesthetic opinion.
She's certainly good-looking.
She's one of the loveliest creatures I've ever seen.
You're certain she'll survive?
Well, as certain as one can ever be about these things.
Any evidence of sexual intercourse? I have to know, Doctor.
Yes.
Recent?
Very recent.
I see you, Thanatos.
What? What did you say?
She wasn't talking to you.
She was looking at me.
I doubt if she can even see you.
I see you, Thanatos, skulking about in the shadows. Why don't you come out and fight like a man? Not this time, Thanatos. You're too late. Much too late. Come back in 100 years.
She isn't...
Quite the reverse. The fever's broken. She'll be all right now.
When can I talk to her?
In the morning. All right. Come back in the morning.
You look quite dreadful, Michael. Did you get any sleep at all last night?
As far as I know, I had a perfectly ordinary night.
You were tossing and turning and muttering. You were still at it when I got up. You work too hard. You know that, don't you?
What was I muttering?
Dunno. Couldn't make out a word. Next time I'll listen more carefully, discover all your guilty secrets.
Don't be silly, Jane.
Sorry.
You know, I hate that sort of humour.
Michael, you're not still worried, are you?
Of course I'm still worried.
But surely now that this girl survived, she'd be able to tell you exactly what happened. You'd have it sorted out in no time.
Possibly.
What's she like?
Who?
The girl in the hospital.
Jane, I told you I haven't been able to say a word to her.
Yes, but what's she like? Is she attractive?
I suppose so. In a thin, neurotic sort of way. Well, I'd better go. She's probably awake by now.
Yes, all right.
I don't know when I'll be back. It all depends on what she has to tell me. I'll try and call you.
Yes, do. Then I know where I am. Otherwise, I'll see you when I see you.
Good morning, Teflon.
Oh, Director. Good morning.
What's the situation?
Well, Dr. Rayner's with her now, doing some checks. The minute he gives the all clear, I'm going to talk to her.
Yes, well, I'll handle that now.
Director, my orders were very clear.
Where is Geoffrey?
In Sector 3, coordinating the search. I'm supposed to get in touch with him as soon as I know what we're looking for and where to look.
Fine. Well, the minute I have any definite information, I'll tell you, and you can pass it on to him.
Director,
Look, Tefler, I am prepared to take full responsibility for anything I may do that hampers the work of your department. Are you prepared to make me the same promise? Look, I'm sure there's no one who can touch you when it comes to tracking down and eliminating contaminated material, but people aren't simply infected meat. They need careful and critical handling if you're to get the results you want, and I think it's just possible that that is more my province than yours.
Well, I just want to do the right thing, Director.
All right, gentlemen, she's all yours.
Miss Ellis,
Oh, hello.
how are you feeling?
Bloody but unbowed. Are you another doctor?
No, my name is Michael Trent.
Oh, yes. You don't waste much time, do you?
You know who I am?
Naturally. I intend to plead guilty anyway.
Guilty?
Well, there wouldn't be a great deal of point doing anything else, really, would there?
Guilty of what, exactly?
The dreaded double I. Illegal intercourse, that's what everyone calls it now, didn't you know? Just popping off to the flat for a quick spot of the old double I.
I take it this was not your first carnal experience.
Oh, quite. She asked for 317 other offences to be taken into consideration. Different times, I mean, not different men. Well, not always.
I'm not impressed, Miss Ellis. You're an educated, privileged person. It's your duty to set an example.
Well, we don't exactly do it in the streets, you know.
These men, who were they?
Men.
Also from the university?
Some of them, yes.
I shall want a complete list of their names.
Then want, as my dear old mum used to say, must be your master. Look, Mr. Trent, you don't impress me either. As you say, I'm an educated lady. I know exactly what you can do to me and what you can't. You just pack me off for a year's manual labour and moral re-education. But don't expect me to turn in my friends.
Friends? What about yesterday?
Ah. Yesterday was rather different.
So I imagine. Do you want to tell me about it?
No, I don't think so.
Miss Ellis, you almost died.
But I didn't, did I?
Would it bother you to learn that the last two women who underwent the same experience as you both did die?
Is that true?
Why should I lie about it?
I'm sure a dedicated man like you wouldn't shrink from telling a few lies if he thought it was in the interests of the community.
Nevertheless, in this case, I have no need to lie. You can ask anybody.
Oh. Oh, dear. Poor cows.
So even if you have no moral sense when it comes to
Yes,
illegal
all right,
intercourse...
all right. What do you want to know?
Everything that happened yesterday.
Well, I finished my classes at lunchtime, so I thought I'd drive out into the country. There's this spot I always go to. I found it by accident one day when I was walking by the river. Quite illegal, of course. It's a little clearing, with the river running along the bottom and trees on all three sides. Perfect for sunbathing because the trees make a kind of sun trap. No one can get anywhere near you without making a hell of a racket. Anyway, I was lying there, clothed in nothing but good intentions, just listening to the river and thinking. The funny thing was, I was thinking it was just the sort of day when I wouldn't be surprised to see Pan leering out at me from behind the bushes.
Pan?
Yes, a figure in Greek mythology, hence panic. Anyway, I was lying there, and suddenly something made me sit up and look at the river. There was something moving out there in the water, a dark shape moving slowly towards the bank. At first I was frightened. I thought, I don't know what, an animal. Then I realized it was a man, the head of a man with a tangle of thick red curls and red whiskers all round the face, all this hair. That was why I'd thought it was an animal. I just stared at him, fascinated, as he came closer and closer to the edge of the river. Then he stood up. He was a giant, 6'3", maybe more. There were drops of water clinging to his brown skin. He was beautiful.
Hello. Don't you look nice then?
I had to laugh. There he was, this golden god of fertility, rising out of the water like some male Aphrodite. And what does he say?
What did you say?
Oh, I don't know, something... You've nothing to be ashamed of yourself.
Then what happened?
You know what happened.
You mean... just like that?
Well, he did ask me.
He asked you?
Very nicely. He made it very clear that I had the option of refusal, which, considering the size of him and the fact that there wasn't anybody within miles, I thought was really rather sweet. What's the point of looking like that?
I simply find it hard to accept that an intelligent, cultured woman with a responsible, worthwhile occupation, a naked man, comes out of the water and you let him... just because he asks you.
What can I say? It seemed like a good idea at the time. Actually, in fairness to him, it still seemed like a good idea even when it was all over. Went on feeling like a good idea till I was about a quarter of a mile from the checkpoint and started feeling like death. He was contaminated, wasn't he?
Obviously.
But how does he survive?
That's one of the things I have to find out. And there's nothing else you can tell me?
No.
If I bring you a map, will you show me exactly where this clearing of yours is?
All right. You won't hurt him, will you?
Tefla?
Yes, Director?
Bring me a relief map of Sector 3 as quickly as you can.
Of course, Director.
Who's Thanatos?
What?
Yesterday, when you were delirious, you were talking about Thanatos.
Was I? Well, I suppose that was pretty apt under the circumstances. He's a Greek god. That's what I lecture in, the mythology of primitive cultures. I tend to think in those terms.
The god of what, exactly?
Death. The arch-enemy of Eros. You know who he was, presumably.
The god of sex.
Sexual love, actually.
Oh, really? Is that what they teach in our universities?
Only to the incorruptible few, naturally. You don't like the idea of sexual love, I take it.
Not at all. You can't dislike something that by definition can't exist. Sex is simply a biological drive that from time to time we have to use one another selfishly in order to satisfy. Love is a shared experience, intellectual and emotional, between two people who admire and respect one another. The two things aren't only unrelated, they're actually in opposition to one another.
No wonder you're so good at your job.
Director, I've got the map.
You mean people really come here for pleasure?
You honestly mean this is the first time you've ever been in the country, Martin?
The first. And except in the line of urgent duty, it'll be the last.
You must admit it has a certain weird beauty.
With great respect, Director, I admit nothing of the kind. The most primitive machines seem to me to have 20 times the beauty, with none of the attendant horrors. I can feel the germs crawling over me.
Would it interest you to know that Geoffrey's people took a sample of the water and found it almost drinkable?
Not by my standards, I'm sure, Director.
Ah, Geoffrey.
Dear boy, it seems I owe you some sort of apology.
No need.
What on earth is he? Can you imagine?
I know no more than you do.
I'm sure this damn girl wasn't hallucinating.
Quite sure.
Well, if he's here, it can only be a matter of time. We've estimated the furthest a man on foot could possibly travel in the time and drawn a radius accordingly. I've got 500 men moving slowly in towards the centre. But it's my guess he's still lurking in these woods somewhere. Too much open countryside round about, and anyway, why should he think we'll come looking for him? We never did before.
Why not simply fire the woods, Director, and drive him out?
Thank you for the suggestion, Martin. I'll bear it in mind. Yes?
Unit 7, sir. We thought we saw something. Ran into a thick copse on our left. If it was a man, he was moving damn fast.
All right, spread out and move in.
Sir?
Come in, Unit 5.
Unit 5, sir.
Alter your angle of search 3 degrees east.
Sir.
Come in, Unit 9.
Unit 9.
Alter your angle of search 5 degrees west.
Stop.
Well, if it was him, he can't possibly get away. They can't be much more than 5 minutes from here. I think I'll go and take a look for myself.
Geoffrey, he mustn't be damaged.
There are 500 of us, Michael, all armed with tranquilizers. I expect we can handle one naked man without too much difficulty.
There he goes! On to the left! Over to the left! Over! This way! There he goes!
They seem to be coming this way, Director.
It certainly sounds like it.
You don't think there could be more than one?
I should think it's very unlikely.
Only I'm unarmed, Director. Director, I think we should return to the car. There's nothing we can usefully do here.
Too late, Martin.
Don't move. I'll kill you if you do. What's that he's holding?
A bow.
What?
A bow and arrow, a primitive weapon.
I mean it. I'll kill you.
You're in enough trouble.
They're going to hurt me.
Nobody's going to hurt you.
I haven't done nothing. Help me. Help me.
I want to help you.
Don't touch him! He's crawling with microbes. Get the protective wrapper. Sir. Big fellow, isn't he? Well, that was pretty painless. All wrapped up in less than half an hour. Well done, everybody. That looks so worried, Michael. It's all over.
For you, Geoffrey. Over for you.
How do you mean, fed up?
Yeah, fed up, that's all.
Is that?
I can't hear you. The factory, the people, every day the same. I just got fed up.
What gave you the idea of living in the country?
It was in this comic. All these people with green clothes living in the woods, killing their own food with bows and arrows. Well, it just looked good.
Oh, the potency of these primitive myths.
I'm sorry, Minister.
Oh, no, it's nothing. Please, go on, Geoffrey.
At first I thought, just try it for a week or so. Just took a food pack and some water and slept out under the bushes. At first, at night, staring up at all the black nothing, it made me dizzy. The stars would come close and then move back again, in and out and in and out, like they was dancing. After a while, when I got used to it, it was fantastic.
What did you do when you ran out of water?
Well, first I thought, I better go back because they told me what would happen to you if you drank anything out of there. But the river looked so clean in the end, I thought, what the hell?
I'll just move on a bit.
By the river. Always by the river. I'd just move on a bit every day, and then if I really liked the place, I'd stay there for a while.
And what did you eat?
Fish, mostly. The river was thick with them. You just stuck a pointed stick in anywhere you fancied, and one would come up wriggling. After that, I made a bow and arrow.
But is it possible? Well, obviously.
We have a full report on him, Minister. He worked in a machine plant on the extreme perimeter. Long history of malingering and sloppy work habits. And what's most important to us, he was in continuous trouble for allowing his PF to fall below the permitted level. The doctors think he must already had a higher than average tolerance for bacteria. And you see, a week acclimatizing himself to the atmosphere, then water and fish from a relatively uncontaminated river. By the time he got round to eating really contaminated food...
He'd built up some kind of natural immunity.
Yes, well, that's how the doctors see it.
And what about these women?
I didn't really go into that, Minister. I didn't think it was my province.
No, quite right. It's all rather alarming, isn't it? I hope you've kept a tight security check on this, Geoffrey. If word ever got out that it was safe to wander around the countryside playing Robin Hood, we'd have a mass exodus on our hands.
I'm afraid it's too late for that, Minister.
How do you mean, Michael?
I received this morning.
Free the last dirty man. Whose handiwork is this? Our friends from CLEF.
I imagine so.
CLEF?
Oh, it's just another group of crackpots, Geoffrey. Nothing for you to worry about. I take it our friend is now undergoing rigorous repurification.
Absolutely, Minister. 2 or 3 days at the most, he should be completely back to normal. Better than normal by his standards.
Well, you seem to have handled everything with your usual thoroughness and efficiency, Geoffrey. Many thanks.
Not at all, Minister. Well, over to you now, dear boy. I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Geoffrey.
Well, how do you suppose our friends came by this little piece of information?
There were over 500 people involved in this operation, Minister. Any one of them could have let something slip.
Always assuming one of them isn't actively involved.
There is always that possibility, yes.
Still, do you really think it's anything to worry about?
Minister, I've made it clear from the beginning that this whole business makes me uneasy. As you know, these organizations spring up from time to time like isolated clumps of weeds, and as such, they've been relatively easy to deal with before they can take root and start to breed. What I've always been afraid of is that they might find some unifying symbol, some standard to tie their grubby little flags onto.
And you think this man could be the one?
He's already succeeded in making the purity laws look foolish by disobeying them and surviving. I wouldn't want him to challenge moral law with equal impunity.
There may be something in what you say, Michael. Still, he should be relatively easy to deal with, surely, as long as you don't fall into the same trap.
Trap, Minister?
Of seeing him as anything more than he is. A rather stupid and extremely antisocial member of the lower orders in desperate need of intensive moral re-education. The kind of person you've dealt with 100 times in the normal line of duty. and, if I may say so, with a very high degree of success. If you're worried about his becoming a symbol, Michael, you must normalize him as swiftly as possible.
When did this come through?
This morning, Doctor. I thought you'd want to see it.
Yes, you're quite... Where is he now?
It's outside, Doctor.
Ask him to come in, would you?
Yes, of course. Come in, please.
Malcolm, what's all this?
I hoped they wouldn't tell you about it.
A request for surgery, but why?
Seemed like a good idea. Then you could all stop worrying about me.
But you were doing so well.
We were having some nice little chats, yes. You mustn't take it personally, Doctor, dear.
But I do take it personally. Malcolm, you must know, except in cases of rape, we hate to use surgery, except as a last desperate resort.
I am desperate.
Oh, nonsense. You're always so full of fun.
It was my birthday yesterday. I was 40. And I suddenly realized that out of the last 20 years, 12 of them I've spent in prison. And I really don't think I can take much more of it.
But you don't have to.
Doctor, dear, I can promise you anything you like. I've done it before, and meant it. And for a year, maybe 2, I can be a good little boy. But then something always comes up, if you'll pardon the expression.
Malcolm.
And then maybe I could find a friend. Just a friend. Someone to share with. And look after. They wouldn't mind that, would they? Under the circumstances?
You're quite safe here, Director. In point of fact, you'd probably come to no harm if you went in there. But we thought we'd keep him behind glass for another day or 2, just to be on the safe side. You can talk to him through the microphone.
Why is he still naked?
We gave him pyjamas, but he refuses to wear them. Says they make him uncomfortable.
Have you tried lowering the temperature in there?
Yes, we hadn't thought of that.
Mick, that's his name, isn't it?
Mick Shelby, that's right, Director.
Mick, can you hear me?
What? Yeah, I can hear you.
I want to ask you
I can
some...
hear you, but I can't see you. Why don't you turn the bloody light on your side?
If you dressed yourself properly, you wouldn't be embarrassed.
I'm not embarrassed. I'd just like to see who I'm talking to.
Hamer, is that possible?
Of course, Director.
Is that better?
Oh, it's you, is it?
That's right. We met in the woods. I said then I wanted to help you. I still do.
Well, you can start by getting me out of this see-through coffin.
You'll be released as soon as you're fit to go into society.
When's that going to be?
When we've talked.
Oh, not again. That fat one was bending my ear for hours. I told him everything 3 times over.
This is different, Mick. This time it's about the women.
What women? I don't know nothing about any women.
Come on, Mick. How do you think we found you? How do you think we knew exactly where to look?
Did she tell you that last one? I didn't think she was like that. Bitch.
You're in very serious trouble, Mick.
Get off.
What do you mean, get off?
Well, don't do any harm, does it? Oh, I know, you're going to say it's wicked and all that, but be honest, where's the harm? Eh? Hey, listen, are they saying I made them do it? Because if they are, they're lying. They're frightened of what you'll do to them. Listen, I wouldn't do that to a girl, even if I had to. And I don't have to, you ask them.
I'd like to, Mick. Unfortunately, 2 of them are dead.
What?
You made them ill. They died very unpleasantly.
Oh, no.
I'm afraid so. You see the result when people begin to decide for themselves what is and is not harmful.
But I didn't know. How could I know?
But what you did was wrong anyway, wasn't it? Mick? Wasn't it?
Mr. Trent?
Miss Ellis, what are you doing?
How is he?
I'm sorry, I don't think that concerns you.
I hear you've got him locked up in a glass cage, like an animal.
Merely until... Should you be wandering around the corridors like this?
Nobody seems quite certain what to do with me. No one knows whether I'm supposed to be a convalescent, or a material witness, or a criminal, or what.
You'll be charged in due course.
And then what? Hard labour?
Not necessarily. The courts are sometimes lenient in the case of a first offence.
But it wasn't a first offence, was it? I'm going to lose my job, aren't I?
Of course. You can't possibly expect us to leave someone like yourself in a position to influence the minds of young people.
You'll find useful work.
Like what? A typist? A factory girl? I was good at my job.
Then it's a pity you couldn't devote all your energies to it.
I'm not a machine.
None of us are machines, Miss Ellis. But most of us don't think ourselves above using the means society places at our disposal to help us keep our animal urges under some sort of civilized restraint.
I really disgust you, don't I?
No?
You can't even look at me properly. No, the other day, I was a bit full of myself. I was trying to, I don't know what, to shock you. Does that all have to come out?
Not necessarily.
What do you want me to do?
What do you mean?
What do I have to do to make you give me a good report?
You don't have to do anything, except convince me of the sincerity of your desire to reform.
And how would I go about that?
You could begin by giving me some names.
I can't. You must see I can't do that.
Then I'm afraid I can't help you.
Michael,
Yes?
I've been thinking, are we absolutely certain that we've found the best way of dealing with deviation?
What do you mean?
Was this patient of mine, Malcolm, he'd been making such good progress. Then today went and put in a request for surgery.
Well, perhaps it's the best thing.
How can it be? I mean, is it really a fair choice, surgery or lifetime's confinement for something they can do nothing about?
Of course they can do something about it. They can practice control the way the rest of us do.
But the rest of us have the outlet of marriage.
What are you suggesting, that we extend the same privilege to deviants?
Why not?
How do you think the ordinary, decent people of this city would feel if they knew that not only were deviants being allowed to practice their perversions to their heart's content, they were doing it at the public expense?
Sometimes you sound just like Martin.
At least Martin has his values straight. I don't know. There's you coming out with all this, that Ellis woman whose only regret for the way she's behaved is that she might lose her job.
I didn't know you were seeing her again.
I ran into her by chance in the corridor. Oh, I'm sorry to be so irritable, Jane. This business, it's still worrying me.
What sort of progress are you making?
None. It's impossible to get through to him. He's like a child. He'll say anything you want in a sulky sort of way, but it's quite clear he doesn't really believe he's done anything wrong.
Does that really matter?
In this case, yes. I think it's absolutely vital he be made to realize what he's done.
Well, would you like me to see him?
Well, it's not really your line of country, is it?
I just thought I might be able to help.
Well, yes. Of course, yes. All right. See him. You might be able to give me some sort of line to go on.
Don't you look nice then?
You've got nothing to be ashamed of yourself. Nothing to be ashamed of. Nothing to
Don't.
be ashamed of. Ashamed.
Don't.
Nothing to be ashamed
Don't.
of. Yes, oh yes, my darling.
Don't you look nice then?
What do I have to do then?
Oh.
To get a good report, what do I have to do?
Nothing.
What do I have to do? What do you want me to
Nothing.
do?
Nothing.
Michael.
What do you want me to do?
Michael.
What do you want me to do?
It's quite safe now, Doctor. His PF is a bit higher than average, if anything.
And there haven't been any side effects?
No, none at all. Physically, he's in perfect condition.
Well, I'll go in then.
Ah, yes. We finally managed to persuade him to put some pyjamas on.
I'm delighted to hear it.
Hello there.
It's Mick, isn't it?
That's right.
Can I come in, Mick?
Make yourself at home. You know the doctor?
Yes.
Going to give me an examination?
I don't think that will be necessary.
Oh.
My name's Trent, by the way, Jane Trent. I think you've met my husband.
Oh, you're his wife, are you? I see why he doesn't have to go looking elsewhere for it.
Shall we sit down? Do you mind if I record our conversation?
I don't care if you set it to music, love. So, when do I get out?
Out?
Yeah. I mean, the doctors say there's nothing wrong with me. Didn't they tell you? I'm a perfect physical specimen.
You'll get out, Mick, when we've dealt with your basic problem.
I haven't got any problems.
Haven't you? Tell me, before you went to live in the country, were there other women?
One or two.
Only one or two?
Well, whenever I got the chance, really. I mean, it's not easy, you know. You lot got them so scared they think their ears will drop off or something.
Perhaps they realised that what they were doing was wrong.
No, they were just scared, that's all.
And you don't think it's wrong?
If you like.
It's got nothing to do with what I like.
Well, where's the harm?
Where's the use? It's a completely non-productive activity. Unless it's a question of producing children, but otherwise it's a completely negative act. Negative and selfish. Gratifying your own desires at the expense of the community, wasting valuable time and energy that could be employed 100 different ways to improve the world we live in. Don't you see?
I suppose so. But you got to have a bit of fun sometimes, didn't you?
You have a purity factor of 93.2. The level is acceptable.
Director, have you seen this filth?
What is it, Martin?
This. They're all over the city.
I warned them. You say there are more of these?
Thousands, Director. And what's worse, posters, giant posters, for our children to gawp at on their way to school. The mentality of these people.
Trent?
The Minister would like to see you, Director, as soon as possible.
You were right and I was wrong, Michael. That's all there is to it. All that raw vigour. What a perversion of genuine talent. Tell me, is he really, but is it a good likeness?
It's a gross distortion in every sense, Minister.
Quite. Still, it serves its purpose. There he is in all his primitive glory, the god of fertility rising naked from the waters. Mythology and pornography make a powerful combination. Have you read it?
Free the last dirty man?
No, on the back.
Have we really become so degenerate, so decadent, that we run in terror from anything natural, anything spontaneous, anything free and unashamed?
A nice touch. We become the corrupt and decadent, they the apostles of purity. Have these people, I wonder, any real understanding of the forces they are dealing with? Well, you were right, Michael, dear. They have found their banner, and they're rallying round it. What do you think we should do?
The main thing, as I see it, Minister, is not to panic. There's no point running round, filling the cells with quivering intellectuals and hysterical misfits. We have to strike. We have
Michael, dear, are you all right?
Oh, no, it's nothing, Minister. I haven't been sleeping very well. As I say, they've found themselves a symbol. The important thing is to rob that symbol of its potency.
And how do you propose to do that?
He must do it himself. Let him appear on every video screen in the city. Let him say that he's done wrong, that he knows he's done wrong, that he's behaved selfishly and stupidly, and that now he's deeply ashamed of himself. Let him say that he now understands the wisdom of the law and proposes in future to obey it unquestioningly.
Will he do that?
He'll do anything to get out of hospital.
Yes. But there must be no suggestion of coercion, Michael. Otherwise the whole thing could rebound on us. He must mean what he says.
He will, Minister. Just give me time.
I'll give you all the time you want, Michael. It's a question of how much time they give you. Oh, hello.
I'm sorry. I seem to have come to the wrong room.
Who were you looking for?
Dr. Hamer.
You are lost. He's in the annex, right the other side of the building.
Of course, how silly. I'm sorry to have bothered you.
That's all right. Don't worry about it.
These women you used, how did it make you feel?
How do you mean, feel?
Did you feel strong, clever, powerful, superior?
I didn't feel nothing.
You felt nothing for these women?
No, I didn't say that. If you must know, it's stupid.
How do you mean?
It's stupid, that's all. You'd laugh.
I wouldn't. I want to know, Mick.
It's just... Well, don't forget it.
Please, Mick.
Sometimes it makes me want to cry.
To cry?
Mind you, I never do.
But why should it make you want to do that?
I don't know. They're lying there, no clothes on, looking up at me. Helpless. I mean, I'm a big bloke. I could do all sorts of terrible things to them.
Would you want to?
Of course not. Of course I wouldn't. But I could. And they trust me.
And that makes you want to cry?
Sometimes. said it was stupid.
You were right. He is a child.
A very dangerous child.
He said something very odd earlier on. He said you told him that those girls had died as a punishment for what he'd done to them. Did you really say that?
Not in so many words.
But you wanted him to believe it.
It's not all that far from the truth. The one was the result of the other.
The wages of sin is death. It's a bit... primitive, isn't it?
When you're dealing with primitives, you need primitive methods. I'm sorry, Jane, I don't have time for intellectual scruples. I want him to know he's done wrong, and I want him to feel guilt because of it. How that guilt is introduced is immaterial.
You hate him, don't you?
Don't be absurd. Of course I don't hate him. I want to help him.
Yes. Well, I'll try and do better tomorrow.
No, there's no point in your seeing him again. I'll deal with him myself from now on.
Just as you like.
I'm very tired. I think I'll go to bed.
I saw your friend this morning.
What friend?
I went into her room by mistake. She's much more attractive than you said she was.
No. No, nothing.
Michael.
Don't you look nice, then?
Michael.
Don't you look nice?
Damn you.
Jane, what on earth are you doing?
Thinking.
At this time of night?
I couldn't sleep. You were making too much noise.
I'm sorry.
You seem to be having quite a lot of difficulty sleeping lately.
Yes, it's all this business. It's worrying me.
Michael, I want a child.
Jane.
I want to talk about it.
What is there to talk about? Of course you want a child. So do I. We both do. Jane, it's the middle of the night.
What better time to talk about making babies? Of course, I know our stress-tension factor hasn't actually reached the critical stage. I know an outlet isn't an absolute biological essential, but don't you think under the circumstances we might make an exception?
Jane, I'm tired out. This business is preying on my mind.
Michael, do you find me attractive?
What an absurd question.
Is it? Is it absurd? Why?
Well, obviously I find you attractive. You're a very attractive woman.
Michael, I am not a schoolgirl fishing for compliments. I know I'm attractive. I know I'm a perfectly respectable sight, with or without my clothes on. What I'm asking is, do you find me attractive?
I don't understand what you're saying.
What I'm saying, for instance, is, am I your physical type? We all know that it's a biological and chemical law that different physical types appeal to different people. Now, I, for example, am tall, fair, a little on the plump side. My skin is rather pink and my eyes are a strong shade of blue. Would you say that that was the type of woman you find yourself attracted to? Or do you prefer some other type? Shall we say, just to seize on an example at random, someone thin, pale, dark, with a vague aura of neurosis?
I can't talk to you when you're like this. I'm going to bed.
Damn you, Michael!
That bloody man, he's poisoned
It's
everybody.
got nothing to do with him.
Then why are you suddenly talking like this? I thought we had a good marriage.
Oh, yes, we get along, we talk, we play chess, we like each other.
Isn't that what marriage is in a civilized society? I'm perfectly satisfied.
Are you, Michael? I used to think you were.
I don't understand. What is it you want me to say?
I want you to tell me whether you asked me to marry you, whether you chose me because you wanted me, or whether my major asset in your eyes, in spite of my undoubted present ability, in spite of all we have in common, is that you didn't. That you'd never have to look across a room at me and suddenly find yourself trembling. That you'd never wake up in the night and lean over me listening for my breathing because I might be dead, and if I was dead, your world would stop. Did you ever feel like that about me, Michael? Did you ever feel like that about anybody?
Look, Jane, I don't know what's going on in your head. You've obviously got hold of some absurd idea. I don't know how, but you're upset, and I'm tired, and this isn't the time to talk about it. We will talk about it, I promise you we will. Now, I must go to bed.
Who was she?
Who?
The woman you felt that way about.
A whore I knew at university.
Would you like to tell me about it?
No, I don't think so. Something I don't care to remember.
But I would like to know about it, Michael.
All right. All right. I'll tell you about my experience with these feelings you suddenly seem to think are so important. One day, when I was 19, when I was in my first year at university, I was standing looking at a notice board. There was a whole crowd pressing round, jostling and pushing, and suddenly I became aware of something warm and soft against my right shoulder blade, a woman's breast. I looked round. There was a girl, slim, dark, pale. She hadn't intended to press herself against me, had only become aware of it when I turned round. She blushed. So did I. All that night I could feel the warmth of her breast against my back. I couldn't sleep. In class, I could think of nothing else. My work suffered. Not too badly at first. I don't think the lecturers even noticed. Eventually, I found an excuse to talk to her. I remember her blushing again, looking down at her feet. This time I didn't blush, although I was shaking all over. We became friends, more than friends. She was reading chemistry. There was this room she had the key to, a place for storing apparatus. We used to go there. At first it was all quite innocent. We'd talk, make plans, sometimes hold hands. I used to love to touch her. I don't mean anything indecent, just to feel the warmth of her flowing into me from her fingertips. Then one day, of course at the time I blamed myself, things began to get out of hand. I managed to control myself. I apologized to her. I said that in future it would be better if we didn't go to the storeroom, that all that must wait for the proper time, that in future it would be better if we only saw each other when there were other people around. She accepted that. She seemed to understand. Only somehow I didn't seem to see so much of her after that. There was always some excuse. The exams were coming. She had to work. I neglected my own work even more. My tutor, a very wise, very clever man, called me in and asked me what was wrong. I couldn't tell him. I was ashamed to tell him. Then one day I felt I had to talk to her, but I couldn't find her. Not in her rooms, the canteen, the library, anywhere. In the end, I never really knew why, I went to the room at the end of the corridor. There was this great red-headed lout who used to come sniffing around her at the time I first knew her. I can't imagine how he ever got into university. I used to laugh at him. The ginger nut. For some reason they hadn't locked the door. I can still see his ugly, freckled backside thumping up and down.
Oh, Michael.
When I got back to my room, I was sick. I mean, physically sick. Again and again. I couldn't stop vomiting. Afterwards, I lay in my bed, shivering like a child. I didn't get up, didn't eat, didn't work. I was like that for 2 whole days. In the end, my tutor came to see what was wrong. This time I told him everything. He was a very wise man. He talked to me for hours, showing me what a fool I'd been, how close I'd come to throwing away the privilege I'd been given, all the time and energy I'd wasted on self-pitying, self-indulgent emotion. When he finished, I felt renewed, purified. Whatever that feverish, degrading, obsessive desire for her should be called, you may think there's a place for it in any marriage. But I don't.
What happened to her?
I've no idea. Working in a factory somewhere, perhaps.
What?
She was expelled, naturally. They both were. Now I'm going to bed.
But how did it happen? How was it allowed to happen?
It just never occurred to us, Doctor. I'm so used to him, and he was always so cheerful. We didn't... He made a rope out of his sheets,
Yes,
and he...
all right. I don't want to know.
He left you this note. I'm terribly sorry, Doctor. Still, perhaps it's for the best. His troubles are over, poor soul.
Oh, quite. Perhaps we should string them all up, put them all out of their misery.
I didn't mean...
No, I know. I'm sorry.
It's quite all right, Doctor.
Doctor, dear, when it came to it, I found I couldn't face the unkindest cut of all, either. So this really does seem the best idea all round. Please, please, please don't take it badly. You really were the nicest of them all. Sorry to be such a disappointment.
Hello, I didn't know you were coming today.
I wasn't. I had a cancellation.
Ah. I wish you'd told me. I'd have put on clean pyjamas.
Shall we go on?
Suits me. No tape recorder today?
No. You sound disappointed.
No, I just
You like the idea of your riveting insights into the human condition being recorded for posterity, is that it?
What's up with you?
Nothing's up. Nothing's up with me. My husband wants you to appear on video. Does that appeal to you?
Me? What for?
So you can tell the whole city how wicked you've been, how ashamed of yourself you are. Would you do that?
Yeah, I don't mind.
You don't mind?
No, if that's what he wants.
But would you mean it?
Yeah.
You'd really mean it?
Well, everyone keeps going on about it, so I suppose it must be.
Would it interest you to know, Michael, that these things are a matter of historical accident, a simple matter of time and place?
My name's Mick.
We happen to live in a desperately overcrowded city where the population growth has to be kept to a minimum and the population under rigid control. But in another time and place we'd all be behaving exactly like you.
Look, I'll do what you like and when you like. I'll say what you like. I don't care.
Ah, but do you feel guilty, Michael? Mick, my husband needs you to feel guilty. Do you feel guilty?
I don't know what's up with you today.
I'm sorry. I've had some bad news. Of course, under the circumstances, he's quite right. My husband's quite right under the circumstances. We must practice control for the good of society. For the good of society, we must suppress these basic selfish desires. We must...
Hey, what's the matter?
I'm sorry.
Hey, come on. It's all right. Don't cry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right. Oh, don't cry. It's all right.
But we agreed you wouldn't see him again.
I told you. I had a patient. He killed himself. I needed something to occupy my mind.
Did you make any progress?
Progress? I don't know.
Jane, there's been a petition. Directly to the minister's office. 1,000 signatures. Some of the names I couldn't believe. They want him set free.
Then set him free. He'll go on video, he'll say anything you want.
But will he mean it?
Stop saying that. Nobody but you gives a damn whether he means it or not.
I'm going to the hospital now. When I come back, we'll have a talk. A long talk.
Whatever you say.
Mr. Trent,
Not now, Miss Ellis.
please. It'll... Only take a minute.
Very well. What is it?
Would you come into my room? Please. Just for a moment.
What is it you want?
Your people were here this morning. I was formally charged with illegal intercourse. I'm being taken to a correction centre tomorrow.
That's standard procedure. It's a purely routine matter now, Miss Ellis. I'm no longer involved with your case.
But when you were here before, you said if I gave you the names of the men, you'd put in a good word for me.
I didn't say that exactly.
Yes, you did.
I said the authorities would accept it as a sign of good faith and that it would be taken into account. Do I take it that you are prepared to give those names?
If I did, would I be able to get my job back when I came out?
No, Miss Ellis, you would not be able to get your job back. What a wretched, self-centered creature you are. You have no genuine remorse, no shame for what you've done. You're simply concerned with hanging on to privileges to which you're no longer entitled.
Why do you hate me so much? Whatever anyone had done, I couldn't hate them the way you hate me.
I don't.
Why won't you look at me? Ah. Is that it? Is that the reason? It is, isn't it? Why didn't you say so? All you had to do was ask. You can, you know, anything you want. Look at me. Look at me.
Cover yourself up. Oh.
What are you frightened of? You afraid someone will find us? You can lock the door. And if anyone tries to come in, you can say you were interrogating me. Huh? There's nothing to be frightened of. It's easy. All you have to do is... Thanatos. Thanatos! Please! You're hurting me!
Just send her home and tell her to come and see me. Director, I didn't know you were here.
What's going on in there?
It's nothing. A small matter of internal discipline.
Why is that woman crying?
Well, it's simply that one of the nurses is rather highly strung, easily upset. I'm quite capable of dealing with it.
What's going on in here?
It wasn't my fault.
What? What wasn't your fault? Matron?
I found them on the floor, like animals.
It wasn't my fault.
You found who?
Her and that creature.
He made me do it. He said he'd hurt me if I didn't.
A small matter of internal discipline, Dr. Rayner. Where is he now?
In his room. When we caught him, he got very frightened, tried to run away. I had to give him an injection to calm him down.
I see. All right, now stop crying and listen to me. Now, you are saying that this man raped you. Is that right?
Rape?
Be quiet, Doctor. What you're saying is that this man forced you to have carnal relations with him against your will. Is that right?
Yes.
Girl, think what you're saying.
The doctor's quite right, nurse. You must think very carefully about what you're saying. You're making a very serious accusation. So let me get it quite clear. He threatened you with actual physical violence unless you agree to his demands.
Yes. Yes, he did.
Thank you. Dr. Rayner, will you come with me, please?
Trent, surely
No,
not.
please.
It's not quite under yet.
Mick? Mick, can you hear me?
Hello. Been a bad boy again, haven't I?
The nurse says you raped her.
Eh?
She says you threatened to hurt her if she refused to do what you told her.
You got to be joking. I told you I don't have to. Hey, you got a lovely wife, you know that? You ought to...
I want this man prepared for surgery immediately.
But you can't.
The penalty for rape is prescribed by law, Doctor. You know that as well as I do.
After a proper investigation.
I'm in possession of all the facts. No further investigation is necessary.
But the girl's obviously lying. She's
You
frightened.
were there, were you?
He denies it.
I've handled dozens of cases of rape, Doctor. Would you care to hazard a guess as to how many of them were prepared to admit to what they'd done?
I refuse. Categorically. Not even you can...
Whether or not my authority extends to the point where I can order you to perform an operation against your will is an interesting point of law, Doctor. However, it's a purely academic one. This hospital is full of doctors, quite capable, and willing to perform what is, after all, a very simple piece of surgery. One thing I can promise you, Doctor. If you attempt in any way to use your own authority to countermand any orders I may choose to give, you'll be lucky to find work washing bedpans in your own hospital. Now ask Dr. Hamer to come and see me, would you?
You look tired, Michael, dear.
I am rather tired, Minister.
Perhaps now all this business is over, a little rest? I must be honest, Michael, and say that I think you acted a tiny bit, what shall I say, precipitately. However, under the circumstances, well, there's absolutely no question but that it was rape.
None whatsoever, Minister.
And the girl is prepared to testify to that.
In private and in public.
Good. Well, perhaps it's all for the best. Not even our friends from CLEF can be degenerate enough to make a symbol of a rapist.
How are you feeling?
Oh, I thought... I'm all right. Is he gone then?
Who?
Oh, Trent. I was talking to him when I dropped off. Has he gone home then?
Yes, he's gone.
I bet he's right choked off with me. Still, I was a bit stupid, I suppose. Mind you, it wasn't really my fault. She was begging for it.
Doesn't matter.
Hey, Doc. Can you do me a favour?
If I can.
Just put a word in for me, will you? But I can't talk to him. Tell him I'll do whatever he wants.
That won't be necessary.
Yeah, Doc, no offence, but I've got to get out of here. It's driving me putty.
You can go home whenever you want.
Really?
Just as soon as you're fully recovered.
Oh, that's great. That's bloody marvellous. Yeah, but don't I have... What have you done to me?
Mick, perhaps it was for the best.
What have you done to me?
You can go home now.
Oh, no. No.
Nurse!
No.
Nurse!
Doc!
Bring a sedative, quickly!
And he actually struck you?
No. But he kept saying he would. Then he threw me on the floor, and he...
Yes, that's all right, Nurse Nichols. There's no need for you to go on. May I say that all of us here, and I'm sure all those watching too, are aware that it must be almost as distressing for you to have to relive your dreadful ordeal in public like this, as it must have been to actually undergo it. You're a very brave girl.
Thank you. I just thought, I thought it was my duty.
There is one other question I'm afraid I have to ask you, Nurse Nichols. Before this dreadful thing happened, had you ever previously indulged in carnal activity?
No, never.
Thank you, Nurse Nichols.
Jane!
Congratulations
What do you mean?
on the success of your exorcism.
What are you talking about? Jane, you've drunk over half the bottle.
Have I? I really hadn't noticed.
Jane, we have to talk. This business. Both of us have been a little irrational, but it's finished now. It's over, and I think we must talk.
I don't want to talk.
Jane.
It's too late, Michael. It's too late for talking.
What do you mean, too late? Look, Jane, I had to do it. I had no choice.
I believe you.
Jane, he was a rapist, an animal.
He never raped anyone in his life.
I don't see how you can say that.
He didn't rape people. He was kind. He asked first.
I don't see how you can know.
Too late all round, Michael. About 12 hours too late.
I don't believe you. Why? Why?
I told you, because he asked me. What if it was really too late, Michael? What if I'm pregnant? Because if I am, Michael, I'm going to keep it. You won't be able to stop me, because if you try, I shall tell everyone the truth. And somehow I don't think you want that. I shall have it and keep it and love it. And however hard you and everyone like you tries to fill its brain with tumours laboured selfish and degrading and unproductive and animalistic, what will you do when I tuck it up in bed and kiss its cheek and whisper in its ear that I know different? Michael, he showed me things. I could show you.
Hose! Hose! Every last one of you!
Thanatos. Thanatos.
You have a purity factor of 93.2. The level is acceptable.
In The Last Dirty Man by Rod Beecham, Michael was played by John Rowe, Jane Knowles, Beth Elizabeth Bell, the Minister Jennifer Piercy, Mick Jack Carr, and Martin Hugh Dixon. Tefler Brian Carroll, Malcolm Sean Arnold, Geoffrey Roger Hammond,